Thank you, Deepak, for that introduction. It's a delight to be here again. I was here about 2 years ago, and I agree. What is Hinduism? Polytheism? What is polytheism? What's monotheism? Partly behind the thinking behind the talk today was when I was in Kerala, quite a few years ago now, with my friend Rich Freeman. We were visiting these tayams, these dance rites in Kerala, and he's an anthropologist and he's fluent in Malayalam, and we were speaking with different people, and we asked this elderly lady if the tayam at this particular place in Pioneer was the same as Chulia, I can't remember her name now. It was one of the Bhagavatis, one of these Bhagavati goddesses. And there was another Tayam shrine about 2 miles down the road with another Bhagavati with the same name there. And we asked this elderly lady, is this Bhagavati the same as the one 2 miles down the road? And she was rather puzzled by this. So, no, this one's here and that one's over there, which made us laugh. But then we asked somebody else, and he said, oh yes, they're the same. They're both manifestations of the great goddess. So I was interested in these two answers. One is, no, they're completely different, and one is, no, they're the same. So we've got, in those two responses, you've got the problem or the problematic that I want to look at today is Hinduism. Can we speak of a polytheism, many gods, or is there one God? So is it really a polytheism? As our elderly lady in Kerala in Pioneer seemed to suggest, or is it not? So that's what I want to talk about. If I can get this to... Oh yeah. So in everyday Hinduism in India, there are lots of different deities, and there's mountains and rivers have gods and goddesses in them and protecting them, and deities of villages protecting the villages. And so I think that's one of the interesting things in the history of Hindu civilization, if we might call it that, is that you have both divinity, if you like, or supernatural powers are both personal and impersonal. So you've got this idea of Brahman as an impersonal absolute, but also you've got the idea of a personal God, Vishnu, Krishna, and so on. So you've got this dual aspect to divinity described in the history of civilizations. And in empirical reality, you've got a pluralism of deities within India and other places as well. Rivers, mountains, forests. And there's a tendency to apotheosis in the history of Hinduism. Apotheosis means turning something into a deity, turning something into a god, like an ancestor or a river or a natural phenomenon or a mountain, through the history of the tradition. Now, I want to give you an example of what I just mentioned, the tayams of Kerala, and the plurality of tayams, and very often with the same names. Has anyone been to a tayam in Kerala? No? Okay. Well, if you ever go to Kerala, it's worth going during the tayam season, visiting these wonderful shrines. This is the place. This is near Pioneer, a Tayam shrine, and you have these goddesses dressing up in these wonderful costumes, a bit like Kathakali, and they are said to get the goddess is supposed to enter them, and they're supposed to dance according to the prescribed tradition, and the goddess. Usually her name is Bhagavati, but you get Chulia Bhagavati and various other names. And then, having danced around the compound, she's offered blood and alcohol, because she's a ferocious goddess, and that's what she demands. So one of the people that we asked was one of these in the crowd here. I can't remember who it was particularly. And here's Vishnumurti this is a god, this isn't a goddess, this is Vishnumurti, who most of the year lives in that shrine behind, you see, and he's aniconic most of the year, only represented once a year embodied within the dancer, who is all dressed up in this elaborate costume. And it's a very high honor to be chosen, to embody the god or the deity in this way amongst this particular social group. And so they chop the chicken, put the head in that bowl of water and pour it out in front of the goddess as an offering. This is, and they do this once a year, and then she's kind of calms down. Actually, I remember when we were there, the goddess dances around and she's taunted by young men, and she gets very angry at them and chases them, and they run away. So it's quite a show, really. And then she marches to the Shiva temple, knocks on the door, but she's refused entry, and that's interesting. And then she goes back to the local shrine. But this area, this is a sacred area with these different shrines in them, and you can see the area behind, which is a wild area, and there'll be naga stones in there, and that's an area sacred to the goddess. It's completely wild, and they just leave it in an uncultivated state. So there are lots of these places throughout Kerala. Or we asked the dancers, what happens when you dance around? One of them says, "Oh, I just pretend, I just go through the motions." One of them says, "Oh, I really get possessed by the goddess," and there's a whole range of responses. So it's not what the internal state of the dancer isn't important. It's the performance and the interaction with the community, which I think is interesting. So, according to this lady that we asked, that's a genuine polytheism, if you like, because these are really different deities, and the one in this shrine is different from the one over there. But you can have a different understanding of it, that they're all manifestations or expressions of the same goddess. Now, these goddess shrines in Kerala are also connected to this ancient idea of 7 goddesses, the 7 mothers, the Saptamartika. And here's an 11th century representation of the 7 mothers, and they're top and tailed by Virabhadra here, and he's off the map there. But anyway, you've got these 7 goddesses, who sometimes become 8, who I think are very, very ancient and get codified into this line. And then you get another one added so that you can represent them in a circle or a mandala. So so you have many different goddesses and gods in India, as you know. I've chosen this as a kind of, not obscure, but a sort of extreme example of polytheism, because here you've got these local goddess shrines in Kerala. Each has a specific deity, sometimes with the same name, and you have people who most of the people there seem to think that they're particular to that place. And it's that ambiguity that I want to really look at. Many of those goddesses and deities and gods were divinized ancestors. They were people whose names are remembered, but who were elevated to a divine status as time went on. And much of this is rooted in Vedic practice, it seems to me. Now, what is this? Now, in the ancient times, this is slightly controversial, but it seems to me that in these we've got the ancient Vedic texts, the Vedic scriptures, and the Brahmanas and the Aranyakas that lead into the Upanishads. You remember those ancient scriptures. You probably know them, some of the mantras off by heart. Now, in that world, in that very ancient world, it seems that you've got this is the cosmology in a way. You have this world, And then you have the last sacrifice, the antieshti, which is your cremation. And then the soul goes into the next world, the preta loka. And your son offers these pindas, this sapinda karana rite, traditionally it was after 10 months, which is a kind of period of gestation, to feed your body in the next world. And then you go into the world of the ancestors, the Pitri Loka, where you're remembered for, I'm getting this from Shaivism mostly, you're remembered for 3 generations, and then you merge into the all gods, the Vishve Deva. And I think it's quite accurate, because I can remember, I know my granddad's name or my great-granddad's name, but I don't know his dad's name, or I don't know my grandmother's name on that side. So you probably remember your grandfather's name and your great-grandfather's name, but I bet you don't remember your great-great-grandfather's name. So I think it's just a human reality. And then they merge into the all gods, the Vishvedeva. Now, how is this reconciled with reincarnation? With the Upanishads, you get this idea of this new doctrine coming in. The Upanishads say, you're reincarnated, you come back down into earth. And I can't remember the precise text now, but you go back down from that higher realm back down into the earth to go back through the cycle again. So I think that this is an old model that is different from the reincarnation model, and one of the beauties of the ancient Vedic world is that they fuse the two together. Now that model seems to carry on into the modern times. So you get confluences of rivers where you offer these pindas to the deities. So going back to our old lady in Kerala, we asked her, what happens when you die? She says, part of you goes into the earth, part of you becomes a crow, part of you goes to heaven, she said. So that was really interesting. So not a very untraditional kind of view in a way, but that was her worldview. So the crows come and take the pindas at the confluences of rivers. And that reflected her understanding, which was much closer to this ancient tradition than the Hinduism that we understand more broadly today. Okay, so yeah, what I've tried to say so far is that you have, with the example of Kerala, you've got lots of different deities associated with ancestors and associated with natural phenomena. And this elderly lady who I've been taking as an example was a kind of genuine polytheist in a sense, saying that these really are separate gods. And she didn't have an understanding of kind of a more metaphysical worldview, if you like. And that's also linked to the divinization of ancestors, where you get this plurality of different gods who were humans who become deities. Now, there is also another story which is also very, very ancient, and that's Hindu monotheism, and that all the different gods are aspects or dimensions of one supreme transcendent reality. And we might call this a Hindu monotheism. So, as we have in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, which you'll be familiar with, the Vishvarupa. Anyone read that? Do you remember that? Where Arjuna asks Krishna to reveal his true nature. And that's right, and he reveals he gives him the divine eye, and he sees his universal form. And he prays to Krishna, please go back to your human form, because it's so terrifying, it's so awe-inspiring. And that's a really wonderful image, because the Vishvarupa is a very fundamental and ancient idea that there is one God, and that all the different deities are aspects of the one God. So in a way, I'm contrasting the Kerala Teyam example with this perhaps more central Hindu tradition of monotheism, where you've got this one being is manifested, appears in all these different forms. Now this is an image I got from the internet. Now this is from the South Indian temple. You might recognize it, but I can't remember where it's from, I'm afraid. But that's a lovely image, I think, of the Vishvarupa. There is Krishna, and all the different heads, all the different faces are aspects of the one deity. So this is not a polytheism, it seems to me. This is a monotheism, but a Hindu monotheism. Now, another text, which is an example, a good example, I think, of Hindu monotheism, is a text I've been working on for a long, long time called a Nature Tantra, the Scripture of the Eye. This was composed probably in Kashmir about between the 8th and 11th century, and it talks about all the different deities and the deity systems as aspects of Shiva, which it calls the Lord of the Eye, or the Lord of Immortality, or the Conqueror of Death, Mrityunjit. Now, I thought I'd share this example with you, because it's a bit obscure. Not many people will know about the Nature Tantra, but it's also a deeply interesting text. And it gets copied for a king of Nepal, one of the Malla kings, Abhaya Malla, in 1200 by this fellow called Kirtidara, and I often wonder, he finishes writing it on Saturday of the bright fortnight in 321 Nepali year. Now, this text, it's an inclusivist text. So I think this is one of the characteristics of Hindu monotheism, if you like, is that it is inclusivist. So all the different polytheistic deities are included within it. And the Nature Tantra is a hierarchical inclusivism, we might call it that, because it says that all these different deity systems are aspects of this one being. So, there's a word that it uses quite a lot, Bhava Bheda. Bheda means distinction or division, distinction, according to Bhava, according to its nature, or according to now it could mean two things. I think it means both in this text. One is according to your own nature, your Bhava, your orientation. What is your own Bhava? In the worship of Krishna, we get this, a sthayi bhava, your basic emotion. Do you approach God as a child, a lover, a friend, or a king? All this range of ways that you can approach God, depending on your bhava, upon your nature. Now, this text uses this word bhava, and it seems to refer to not so much the subjectivity, but the objective emanations or manifestations of God, of Shiva. So I think it means both the different manifestations of Shiva and also the different proclivities of you, of us as believers. And each of the chapters of this text are devoted to different Bhava Bhedas. So it really reflects the religion of all the religions that were around at the time. It incorporates into it. So it's got a chapter on Shiva as Sada Shiva, the gentle Shiva of the traditional Shiva Siddhanta. So perhaps I should fill in some background. In 7th to 13th century, say, in Kashmir, you've got worship of Shiva becomes very important. And then it dies out by about the 13th century. But that's the main religion, really. And you've got the main god there is a deity called Sada Shiva. I might have a picture of him here. And he's a gentle form of Shiva. Now, alongside the Shiva Siddhanta, you've got a ferocious form of Shiva called Bhairava, who is also worshipped, and that religion becomes very important in Kashmir, and also it's supported by kings too. Now the Nature Tantra is a text which says it's a universal text that incorporates both the gentle Sada Shiva and the ferocious Bhairava into it. There's a chapter devoted to Sadashiva, to his visualization. You visualize him in your mind, and you do your puja to him in your mentally, your manasa yaga, your mental worship, and then you worship him externally in a form. You do the purification of the body, then mental worship, then external worship, and then a fire ritual, Vedic fire ritual in that sequence. So you do that for each of these. Sadashiva Bhairava, ferocious Bhairava with his bulging eyes. And Tumburu, who's heard of Tumburu? He's forgotten about it now. He was an important deity at the time. And his four sisters. Tumburu has four sisters. And he's in the Kashmir Valley at that time. That was a big tradition, big religion. But now it's all gone. And Kuleshvara, another form of Bhairava. He's worshipped with the goddess Kuleshvari, and the Buddha and Vishnu. And all of these have separate chapters. Actually, Buddha and Vishnu are in one chapter together, chapter 13. So the text is saying, all these different religions that are around at the time, let's incorporate them into this one system, with our Netranata, the Lord of the Eye, at the very top. So they all become aspects or manifestations of this one supreme transcendent power. So that's interesting. I mean, other Hindu traditions do that as well, but this is happening at quite an early time. So there are some iconic representations of this god. These were taken from a book illustrating the art of Kashmir. So Amriteshvara Bhairava, he's a form of Bhairava, but he's white, and he's holding a pot of immortality, the nectar of immortality. He's often depicted with the goddess sitting on his knee. But who's heard of him now? He's long gone, really. But although there's some activity, some in Nepal, he's still worshipped to some extent. So this is the structure of the text. So you've got this supreme transcendent God, which it calls the eternal, which it calls also in one place the goddess. It refers to this transcendent deity as the goddess. But usually it speaks of this being as Shiva Mrityunjaya, the conqueror of death, and Netranata, the Lord of the Eye. So these are names of this deity used interchangeably. And it's a trans-cosmic reality. This is a God who's outside of the universe, who creates the universe, but also manifests within the universe. So he creates the cosmic order in these... you heard the word tattva. In Samkhya philosophy, you've got the 24 or 25 tattvas, including the self. It takes those, so it's Samkhya-like, but it adds its own Shiva 11. So there are 36 tattvas in this system. And God, this transcendent eternal being, manifests in all these different levels. And it also manifests in these different gods. All the different deities are manifestations of this one supreme being. And it calls these Bhava-Vedas, distinguishing according to being or level of the universe. And this transcendent being also manifests in humans, animals and plants, and in supernatural agents. So there's lots of chapters in this book for appeasing yoginis or goddesses, and also asking them to help you if you want to get your kids sick. So in the days before we know about the etiology of disease and so on, you'd employ the mantra to help cure your child, and this is a lot of this material in this text. And so the goals of this text are protection of the family, protection of the kingdom. So the kings, the king adopted this text, the kings of Kashmir in Nepal, particularly in Nepal, and to achieve accomplishments, worldly success. This can be magical powers, but it has a wider kind of semantic range, just to mean success, to ensure that you've got a good business, so that your cattle don't die, and this kind of thing. And ultimately, liberation, moksha. So if you have faith in this system, you'll be successful in the world, but you also, at death, you'll achieve liberation, which it understands as immortality. And Shiva Tulya, identity with Shiva. Now that's ambiguous. What does that mean? Does that mean that you become one with Shiva? Or does it mean you become equal, Shiva Tulya, equal to Shiva? And I think the Nature Tantra is not clear about that, because you've had both. In the Shaiva Siddhanta, you become equal to Shiva, Shiva Tulya, but you don't merge with Shiva. But in the Bhairava tradition, you do become one with Shiva. So you've got both in that Shaiva tradition. How's the time? And there's that's an 18th century representation of Shiva. I always like this. It's I can't remember where it's from. Anyone recognize it? No. But it's a sort of family picnic, if you like. But it's a very strange family, Shiva, with the goddess Uma, and he's stringing heads on a thread there, with the son Skanda sitting on her knee, and Ganesha there. So a kind of family scene, but slightly odd. Okay, so that's one picture. So I've started with the possibility of Hindu polytheism in the Kerala Teyam tradition, and our elderly lady saying, no, they're really distinct, these deities. And then you've got a tradition, something like the Nature Tantra, which is, well, no, they're not distinct. All the different gods are aspects of one god, but in a sort of hierarchical sequence. So this one god manifests in different forms. We saw that in the Bhagavad Gita, and we see that in the Nature Tantra. And then we have a third position, which is non-dualism, which is Advaita. There is only one being in the universe, as Brahman, and the Atman is identical with the Brahman, and the whole universe is identical with God. The world is God. Now, so you've got these distinct metaphysical positions. You've got a pure monism, all distinction is illusion, Maya from Shankara and the whole Advaita Vedanta tradition. All divisions are illusory, so we're sitting here as separate beings, but actually at the end of the day, there's just one being here, which is Brahman. There's that position advocated by people like Shankara, and in a different kind of way, Abhinavagupta and Kshemaraja. And then you've got an emanationism, a bit like the Nature Tantra that I just described. Okay, you've got the multiplicity, the plurality of the universe and all the different gods. They're all manifestations or emanations of that one supreme power. So you have this transcendent power outside the universe who manifests as the universe and pervades the universe. We might call that a qualified non-dualism. Anyone heard of Ramanuja? You might have done. Yeah, so that's his position, the Ramanuja position. There's also the Nature Tantra position, I think. And then you get a pure dualism. I say, no, that's not true. Like our elderly lady in Kerala, no, this deity here is quite distinct from the one over there. And the dualism says that the soul, you and me, are quite distinct from God. There's no union there at all. They're completely separate. And that's eternal. It's a bit like Madhava. Madhava was a Vaishnava theologian who maintained that position as well. So, and that's related to the different deities as well, who become more like the Kerala position, when you've got these quite distinct deities whose essence is eternally separate from all the others. So within Hinduism, you've got these three metaphysical positions, if you like. The majority position, I think, is that of the Nature Tantra, which is a kind of qualified non-dualism or emanationism. That's what I think is the majority tradition and the history of the tradition. Many would argue, no, it's actually, there's a pure monism. That Advaita is the central core. Certainly Vedanta is the main Hindu tradition, I think, in the history, although Shaivism was the dominant position between the 8th and the 13th century. But after that, that goes down, and then you get a rise of Bhakti, and a more individualistic religion, in my view, happens. So here's some questions. Is monism, Advaita, not twoism? Dva is like duo, like two, ta-ness, two-ness. So Advaita, not two-ness, non-dualism. Is that the same as pantheism? Pantheism is a Greek word that God is in everything. So a bit like William Wordsworth or Coleridge or something. God is in everything. Anyone read that Lines of Britain Above Tintern Abbey? You might have read that, Wordsworth. It's a nice poem that expresses this idea that God rolls through all things. God is immanent in the world. And then there's another word, panentheism, that God is in things. So it's not that God is everything, but God is in everything. It's a slightly different position. So I suspect... I'm not quite sure. Hindu monism, can it be fitted into these categories, these Greek categories, panentheism or pantheism? Perhaps it can't, but it's a question for you to think about. But I think the majority tradition is emanationist, which is the view that you have a transcendent deity who emanates as the universe and emanates as the different gods. All the different deities in Hinduism are emanations or appearances, are bhasa, of this one transcendent power. God in its essence is ineffable, invisible, but sometimes becomes visible in manifest form. So the icons in temples and murtis are bhasas, are appearances of the deity, of this transcendent power. But having said that, different traditions tend to say that their God is the highest. So the Nature Tantra is guilty of this. So it says our Nature Nata, our form of Shiva, that's the highest being, the transcendent power. And all the others are emanations of it. But so inclusive, I think that the Nature Tantra is an early example of inclusivism. And that tends to be a characteristic of Hindu thinking. It's inclusivist. It tries to be inclusive of all these different traditions. So we saw in the Nature Tantra, it includes the Buddhists and the Vaishnavas and the Shaivas, all within its umbrella, if you like. So all these different theologies are included within a system of thought. And I think the Nature Tantra is a very early example of that. And we get this also in the 19th century. In the 19th century, Hindu Renaissance, Hindu thinking is inclusivist. Vivekananda is an inclusivist thinker. And perhaps contemporary Hindu theology is inclusivist. So different deities different deities are lived realities for people, there's a devotion and experience of being devoted to that particular deity, but at a more abstract level, you could say that they're all parts of this, all included within the same one being. Well, I think that these deities are not simply theology, but they're lived realities for people. We saw this with our Kerala lady. She was very devoted to this Bhagavati, and it was a lived reality in her life. It wasn't just an abstraction in theology. It was a lived reality. So I think that's important that Hindu polytheism, get rid of the word, and actually you have people have lived their lives devoted to certain deities, and that's a lived reality for them, and that deity is real. Actually, there's an interesting, I've just marked one of our students at Oxford. She's just done a dissertation, undergraduate dissertation, on people's relationship with their Ishtadevata, with their personal deity. And that was a really interesting thesis. And she did field work, very unusual. And she went to India, did some field work, and she asked people, and some people were saying, actually, I talk to my God every day, this lady was saying. And this lady was saying how she asks the deity for help, and she gets responses too. So that's interesting. So it's not just, it's a dialogue that takes place. So I thought that was deeply interesting that this undergraduate had done this work and through interviewing people about their relationship with their own deity, and how that deity is a guide for their life. So this idea, is Hinduism polytheistic? And perhaps actually it's slightly abstract, but what we're really getting at is that different deities are lived realities for people, and their lives are guided by them. So, I better stop. Oh, good heavens, I've been going on for much too long.
We still have 10 minutes.
Okay. Is Hinduism really polytheistic? Can we speak of Hindu monotheism? What are the characteristics of Hindu monotheism? What is the world in relation to a theistic reality in Hinduism? So these are questions that I could leave you with. And another, we only got 10 minutes, and what is time? Is history important in this idea? What is history? Is that important or not? There's this idea in Hinduism that things are getting worse, Kali Yuga. Does history have any significance for Hindu monotheism, the way it does for Christian monotheism, say? Does human life have greater significance than other forms in Hindu monotheism? And are things getting worse according to Hindu theology? So there we are. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Flood. So we'll have a short Q&A. Anybody who wants to ask a question, please grab hold of this from me, and we'll start.
Thank you, Mr. Flood, for a wonderful lecture. I just wanted to ask, how do you relate gunas, the three qualities of sattva, rajas, and tamas, to this monotheism thing? Because I think because of the gunas, we have polytheism, because it links to swabhava, because each person has different swabhava, and each person has different swabhava at different times, and that's how we have bhakti ras and gyan and all other forms of paths of enlightenment. So how do you connect these into polytheism?
Great question. Yeah, well, that's terribly important. The gunas, the qualities, the three qualities in Samkhya, the different deities have different qualities associated with them. So like Bhairava, the ferocious deity, is associated with the rajas, passion, but Sadar Shiva, the white one that I showed, he's sattvic, he's light, he's quality of lightness and sattva. And also the gunas, as you say, are associated with your svabhava, with your own proclivity, with your essence in a sense. So yeah, these different, I think polytheism is exactly correct, that they are understood in terms of, they are read through the lens of the gunas. Yeah, I didn't talk about that, but they are. Absolutely connected to the cosmological view. Yeah, the gunas come in at the prakriti level and govern the different qualities of different deities and different people too. That's right. It's so important. Yeah, I didn't mention it, but thank you for it. That's right, it's Samkhya philosophy, that's right. But it's so important that it pervades the tradition. Yes, that's right.
Okay, we have a question here.
Professor Flood, we are so grateful that you come here, and I don't know whether all of you realize Professor Flood left Oxford at 12 o'clock midday and won't be reaching back well past 9 or 10 o'clock. So we're grateful for your time. When I was in my infancy, in our family with our sisters, we would choose a god, and then we'll have a fight. So my god used to be Shiva, and one of my sisters will choose Krishna. And I would always win, because Shiva had the third eye, which I'm told is called Trayambuku Veda. That's the name. And that was the first intercontinental ballistic missile. He could open his third eye and decimate to ashes anybody he wanted to. It was so powerful. But then sometimes my sister would try to win because she had chosen Krishna and he had the Sudarshan Chakra. And now Sudarshan Chakra was the first, most powerful drone. See, it could go to, it was intercontinental, not just go 500 miles or 1,000 miles. It could cross continents and kill whomsoever Krishna wanted. So the question I was really wanted to ask you was, we see sculptures of various gods and demigods. Since nobody has seen God, how close is that resemblance? We've got this picture in our mind. What does Krishna, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma look like, and Ganesh? Is that just imagination, or what do you feel?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. But I love that idea of you and your sister having kind of battled Shiva's eye versus the drone chakra, which can never always dodges the eye, as I can imagine that. So yes, all these, God is unknowable in these traditions. God is purely transcendent, according to many texts, according to the Nature Tantra and many others. So, but appears in these different forms. So it depends on how. Some people say they see these forms of deities. I mean, I met somebody who said that she had seen Kali. She has a relationship with Kali, and who am I to doubt that? But whether it's your question, is it just in your imagination or is it real? That's a $1,000 question, isn't it? I don't know the answer to that. What do you think?
I think it could well be imagination.
Okay, there we are.
We have a question.
But, oh yes, so one more thing to say on that. There was this idea, particularly in the Romanticism, imagination takes you into reality more than, it's not kind of false, but it's actually intensification of reality. So I quite like that idea of imagination being an intensification.
Thank you, Professor Flood. I've got two questions. I'm going to be a bit cheeky. First question, so you mentioned the Netra Tantra and how it sort of makes those five or six schools or religions inclusive as one. What thread or what narrative does it use to sort of include them into as one? Because we've seen, like, when contemporary Hindus have tried to do that with like Buddhist, Jains and stuff like that, it's kind of not really worked. So what has the Netra Tantra done? That's the first question. And the second question is, going back to your students' dissertation project, what were the key themes that they found from their fieldwork?
Yeah. Well, that first question is really interesting because I was having a conversation with my colleague Rembrandt about this, and it has no narrative. The Netra Tantra does not have a narrative that links them up together. It simply presents chapter after chapter with an implicit hierarchy, with the Shiva Siddhanta at the top, right the way through. Now, we were contrasting that with, say, Chaitanya, which does have a narrative of different deities and visualizations, with the gopis and with the different stories of Krishna. So the person identifies with the different stories. So there's a narrative dimension there, which is absent from this material. On your second question, this student, her interviews with about 2 or 3 people, which is enough for an undergraduate dissertation. What was your question? That she... of the themes were the themes were deeply personal, like how she should react to her husband and her kids and this kind of thing, and what if she was right or wrong to have this argument, and then the deity was something to say, no, you should go and apologize. You should go and apologize, or might the deity say, well, no, you were right there. But so this was the theme was that the god was very real for the person who was speaking with it, her, him. In her three examples, there were different deities. But yes, I thought that was one of the themes, that the god was very real, like a person.
So it's like how they have different bhavs in bhakti.
Yes, like the different bhavs in bhakti. Exactly so, different bhavs in bhakti. Yes, that's very good. Yeah, yeah. So that came out in her fieldwork.
Okay, we have a question here.
Namaste. Very interesting topic. I've studied lots of philosophies over the years, and I've been stuck on Adi Shankaracharya's philosophy. So I know a little bit about Advaita philosophy. Having studied it all, it distilled down to one phrase for me, Tattvam Asi. Mm-hmm. There was an omission in your presentation, which I thought, having said that, the explanation on Tattvam Asi is very critical in trying to understand the Hindu philosophical texts. What's your view on it?
Well, I think, yes, I didn't mention that, but Tattvam Asi is a wonderful idea of non-dualism, in the sense that you are that essence. Now, it's interesting, Patrick Olivelle, in his translation of the Upanishads, he translates Tattvam Asi, not you are that, but you are like that. Now that's a different kind of shift that he's introducing there. So I think he's more of he's introducing a Ramanuja-like interpretation. But Tattvam Asi, it's a classic, standard, non-dualistic phrase. You are that essence. And that's standard Shankara. That's right. But the Madhva would reject that. He says, Tattvam Nasi, you are not that. And Ramanuja is in the middle, of course. Of course, I can't adjudicate on matters of truth, but certainly the Tattvam Nasi is a very deep and strong tradition within the history of Hinduism. It resonates with you. Yeah.
Okay, Professor Flood, I have a question for you. So does polytheism allow us to swim in Maya?
Yes, polytheism allows us to swim in Maya with joy.
Okay. Is it not also a form of cop-out?
Well, if you're a non-dualist, it certainly is. You're no, according to the non-dualist, you're no nearer God at the top of the mountain or at the bottom, because this idea of ascent up through the levels of the universe to get to God at the top, a strict non-dualist, a Tattvam Asi non-dualist, would say actually you're not closer to God at the top of the universe than at the bottom, because there's only one being.
Right.
That you have to. Yeah, it's a leap. You have to leap into that recognition. Yes. Okay. So if you're swimming in Maya and enjoying it, you're in a state of deep delusion, according to that.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Okay. Could we please have a round of applause for Professor?